I never imagined I'd become one of those women who lived parallel lives. One where I dutifully play the role of a wife and restaurant administrator, and the other. Well, I'm still trying to understand what the other is becoming. My name is Rachel. I'm 49. I manage a bustling Mediterranean restaurant in the heart of the city, where I greet guests with a smile I've perfected over years. Charming, warm, and deceiving. The truth is, I'm tired. Not physically, not even emotionally, but tired of feeling invisible. My husband, Jack, is 60 and retired in every sense of the word. He used to be lively, passionate, curious. Now he rotates between the TV, the bar with his friends, and the bed we once shared like a secret. That bed has become a quiet battlefield, cold, untouched, and full of resentful sighs.
We don't argue.
We don't fight. That would imply energy. No, we've quietly unraveled, like an old sweater with a loose thread neither of us bothered to cut. And then there's my son, Logan. He's 26. Bright, driven, and a little too obsessed with his online business. He sells sneakers, resells them to be exact, running a growing shop from the confines of his bedroom. His room glows at night from multiple monitors and LED backlights. He's turned our house into a warehouse of ambition, and though I admire it, I also fear it. He works too much, eats in silence, sleeps during daylight. I try to coax him out of his digital world, inviting him to eat with me, watching silly shows together, even dragging him to yoga once, but most of the time, I'm met with a distracted smile and a promise of later. Despite that, we're close. I've always tried to be the kind of mother who doesn't judge, who listens first and lectures second. I'm not the kind to gossip with other moms at brunch about lazy kids. Logan isn't lazy. He's just disconnected. From the world. From people. And lately from me. A few days ago, something shifted. I came home early from the restaurant. The lights in the hallway were dimmed. His door was slightly open, a rare sight, and I heard him speaking to someone. Yeah, it's a great idea. But I can't tell her yet. Her? My heart fluttered in a way I didn't expect. Not out of jealousy, of course not, but out of curiosity. Relief, even. Maybe he was finally talking to someone. Maybe he wasn't as alone as I feared. When he came out, he jumped a little, not realizing I was there. Who were you talking to? I asked with a small smile, pretending not to be too interested. No one, he said too quickly. Then he corrected himself. A friend. Just business. I raised an eyebrow. A girl? I teased. He chuckled nervously and walked past me to the kitchen.
No.
I mean, it's about a new product. I've got a big idea. Really big. But I'm not ready to share yet. He poured himself a glass of water, but I noticed his cheeks flush slightly, and his hands trembled just enough to betray his calm facade. That was when something twisted in my gut. A flicker of unease? Or maybe just a mother's instinct. I didn't push, but I kept thinking about it. That night, I lay in bed while Jack snored beside me, lost in dreams that probably involved beer and soccer scores. My eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling, replaying the moment in the kitchen. What kind of product makes a grown man blush? What kind of business deal makes a son hide his screen from his mother? There's something he's not telling me. Something that's growing between us like an invisible thread, tugging softly, insistently. And I'm afraid that if I pull too hard, I'll unravel something I can't stitch back together. A week goes by. I try not to press Logan about the mysterious product he's working on. Every fiber in me wants to ask, to dig, to know what idea has him up late and pacing in silence. But I don't. I just stay in my role, loving, supportive, patient. The kind of mom who lets her son find his own way, even when the air between us is pulsing with unspoken tension. He keeps working, typing away late into the night, often with headphones in. We eat together sometimes, talk about mundane things like grocery prices and social media trends. But I can see it in his eyes. He's hiding something, and it's not just about business. There's a guardedness in him, a hesitation that's new. One afternoon, while he's out on a supply run, I find myself standing at the threshold of his room. I hesitate. I haven't walked into his space without knocking in years.
He's a grown man.
His room is his office, his studio, his sanctuary. But something compels me, a strange cocktail of concern, maternal instinct, and something else I can't quite name. I step inside. The room smells faintly of cedar and electronics. Boxes line the walls, some open, some sealed. His desk is cluttered with tech gear, shipping labels, notes scribbled on post-its. I move slowly, cautiously, not touching much. Just scanning, looking. And then I see it. A notebook. It's half tucked under a pile of receipts. I shouldn't. I know I shouldn't. But my hand moves before my conscience can stop it. I flip to the last page. There, in his unmistakable handwriting, are the words, "Products for you to love yourself." And below that, written in a different color pen, "For men or women?" My heart skips. A sudden warmth rushes to my cheeks and chest. I blink, unsure if I'm reading too much into it, or not enough. What exactly is he trying to create? What kind of product makes someone love themselves? Or is it just my own physical loneliness twisting the meaning? I close the notebook gently, my hand trembling slightly, and step out of his room as quickly as I entered. But the words stay with me all day. Products for you to love yourself. The phrase loops in my mind like a whisper, drawing out thoughts I'm not sure I should be thinking. Every time I try to focus on something else, checking inventory at the restaurant, folding laundry, stirring pasta, my mind floats back to those words and the questions scribbled beneath them. For men or women? It gets hot in my kitchen and not from the stove. Is Logan lonely? Is that what this is about? Is he trying to fill the gap of intimacy with something tangible? Something he can design and control? A way to help others while maybe helping himself? And what if he's not the only one feeling that void? That night, when Logan returns home, I act as if nothing's changed. I smile. I ask about his day. I make us dinner, and we eat like we always do, side by side at the breakfast bar, watching muted TV while the city lights flicker outside. But part of me is watching him more carefully now. Waiting. I don't mention the notebook. I don't ask about his product. I want to see if he'll tell me on his own. If he'll bring one of those products into the house. If he'll trust me. And as I wash the dishes that night, I find myself wondering something I never thought I would. Would I be ready if he did? I told myself I was doing it for trust. That the reason I stayed calm, composed, and supportive was to keep Logan open with me. To make him feel safe. I wasn't snooping. I was preparing the ground for honesty. At least, that's what I repeated every time my curiosity edged toward obsession. Jack, my husband, knew nothing. He wouldn't care anyway. His world had narrowed down to beers, bar talk, and old Western reruns. He asked about Logan once last week, only to mumble something about kids these days when I mentioned the online business. He was disconnected, emotionally and physically. Whatever energy he once had for me had been lost years ago in the folds of routine and boredom. So I let myself feel more than I should, because I was the only one who cared what Logan was becoming. The only one who watched him grow into the man he is now. The only one still paying attention. Days passed, and I kept my distance outwardly. Inwardly, though, I was unraveling. That phrase from the notebook still echoed through me. Products for you to love yourself. Every time I passed by Logan's door, I wondered if something new had arrived. A prototype? A finished piece? A secret meant for his audience? Or maybe something deeper, something he couldn't say out loud. And then one afternoon, while he was out again, probably picking up materials or fulfilling orders, I gave in. I stepped into his room, carefully, like I was crossing a sacred line. And there it was.
Small.
Discreet. But unmistakable. A toy for men. My breath caught in my throat. The room was already warm from the afternoon sun, but suddenly it felt 10 degrees hotter. So I had been right. All along, I'd known. And now, seeing it in the open, as if waiting to be discovered, something inside me trembled, not with fear, not even with shock, but with heat. I reached for it.
Just to see.
To hold what he had designed, what he had chosen to place in this private space of his life. It was smooth, silent, modern, almost clinical in its design. Nothing crude about it, just personal, intimate, honest. And then the sound of keys. The front door opening. I froze, still holding it. No time to hide. No place to run. I barely had a second to put it back on the desk before Logan stepped into the doorway. Our eyes met. His expression froze mid-breath, caught between confusion, alarm, and something else I couldn't quite name. But I didn't back away. Instead, I took a breath, walked right up to him, kissed him gently on the cheek, and said with a playful smirk, "Cool product. People will like it. Well done." His mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Then, finally a shaky, "You really think so?" I met his gaze and nodded, keeping my tone light.
Sure.
Who knows? Maybe I should try something like that too. I teased, letting the words hang in the air just long enough. And then I walked past him, letting the silence stretch between us like a drawn bowstring. I could feel his eyes on my back, the tension coiled so tightly that every movement felt electric. The rest of the evening passed in quiet fragments.
Dinner. Dishes.
The murmur of the TV. But all I could think about was him, alone in that room now. The door closed behind him. Did he think about me? Did he wonder if I had touched it? Held it longer than he expected? And more than anything, I couldn't stop thinking about what he might be doing in there now, beneath the soft hum of his LED lights, in the quiet cocoon of his late-night world. Would he test the product? Would he imagine someone else doing it? Or, dangerously, did he wonder if I meant what I said? Sleep evaded me completely. I couldn't bring myself to lie beside Jack. The weight of his body next to mine felt more distant than any physical space ever could. We hadn't touched in weeks, maybe months, except in those routine, obligatory ways that leave no warmth behind. So I left the bedroom, quietly barefoot. The hallway was dim, cool against my skin. I pulled a throw blanket over my lap and curled onto the sofa like a woman avoiding her own life. But I couldn't escape my thoughts, not tonight. They circled around one person only, Logan. I closed my eyes, but all I could see was the way his eyes looked at me after I touched his cheek earlier. There was hesitation, yes, but also something burning beneath. A question. A hope even. The image of that product, the one I found, flashed in my mind. I thought about the way it felt in my hand, the message it seemed to carry, and the fact that he had left it out, unhidden. And that's when something inside me tipped. I picked up my phone, opened his contact, and stared at the blinking cursor. My heart was pounding, louder than Jack's snores muffled behind the bedroom door. Then, without letting myself overthink, I typed, "Why do you need a toy if I'm here? I'm in the hall now." I pressed send. My hand trembled the second the message disappeared into the night. A minute passed, then 2. And then I heard him. The sound of his door. Bare feet brushing quietly over the floor. I didn't turn to look at first. I just waited, heat rising in my chest, in my stomach, in places I hadn't felt stir in years. "Mom," he said softly, his voice barely more than a breath. I turned toward him. Our eyes met. The air between us shimmered with something unspeakable. "I got your message," he said, stepping closer. I gave him a faint smile. "Was it too much?" "No," he said quickly. "Just surprising." He sat beside me slowly, carefully. I could feel the warmth of his thigh, close to mine. I didn't move away. "I couldn't sleep," I admitted. He glanced at me, eyes searching. "Because of me?" "Yes," I whispered. His hand was on his lap, fingers twitching, uncertain. "I didn't mean for you to find that." "I know," I said, placing my hand over his. "But maybe I was meant to." He looked down, his breath uneven. "You're not mad." I shook my head. "Not mad. Just curious. And maybe a little sad." "Why sad?" I hesitated, then said, "Because I saw something in that product. Something that told me how much you must be craving closeness. And I realized, I do too." He turned to me slowly. I don't want you to feel alone, I said, my voice barely audible. I don't want you to feel that way either, he replied. The silence wrapped around us, not awkward, but charged, pulsing with everything we hadn't said for years. Would it be okay, he asked, pausing, swallowing, if I laid my head on your lap, just to feel close? I nodded. He shifted, carefully resting his head against me. My fingers moved gently through his hair, stroking slowly. He exhaled, and I felt the way his body relaxed into mine, like he'd been holding himself together for far too long. I leaned down and whispered, "You can talk to me about anything, Logan." "I know," he said quietly. "And you don't have to use toys to feel loved. Not when I'm here." His eyes opened, just for a second, and met mine. Then he said, "Can I ask for something else?" I paused.
What?
He sat up slightly and turned toward me, his hand gently resting on my arm. "Touch me the way you did earlier, on my shoulders." That massage. I haven't felt someone care for me like that in a long time. I nodded, breathless, and began again, my fingers pressing softly into the tension of his muscles. This time slower, more deliberate. His eyes closed, lips parted slightly. A quiet sound escaped him, a sound that made my heart flutter in my chest. We stayed there so close, my fingers moving with care, his breath shallow and quiet. He didn't ask for more, and I didn't offer it. But in that moment, where silence met warmth and touch met trust, we crossed something invisible, something neither of us could take back. I didn't go back to bed. Not to Jack. Not to that cold, empty mattress where I'd spent too many nights pretending I didn't feel what I was feeling now. Instead, I stayed there on the couch beside Logan. He hadn't moved much since the massage. His head rested lightly against my thigh, his chest rising and falling in a soft rhythm. His body, usually coiled with the stress of long hours, digital deadlines, and unspoken emotions, was finally still. I just watched him for a moment. The room was quiet, lit only by the dim glow from the kitchen nightlight, casting silver shadows across his face. He looked younger like this.
Softer.
Vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen since he was a teenager staying up late to finish school projects, asking for one more minute, one more story. I let my fingers drift through his hair again. He didn't stir. The moment felt suspended, weightless, like something outside of time. I leaned down just slightly and kissed his cheek.
Light.
Careful. He didn't open his eyes, but I felt his breath shift. Then I kissed his forehead. A deeper stillness settled between us. He made a small sound, content, maybe, but he didn't speak. And then I did it again, slower this time, letting my lips linger a fraction longer than before. He turned just enough that I could feel the edge of his jaw beneath my fingertips. In his silence, I knew where his thoughts had gone. The product. The one I found. The one I had held in my hand. He was thinking about it now. I could see it in the soft tension returning to his jaw, the way his fingers subtly curled against the blanket. And I was thinking about it too. Not because of what it was, but because of what it represented.
Need.
Not just physical, but emotional. Human. My touch became gentler. I traced a line along his temple with the pad of my thumb, then let my fingers trail down to the delicate curve of his ear.
He shivered.
I smiled, barely. Then, slowly, I began to massage the edge of his ear between my fingers, just the way I used to do when he was small, back when a touch like this meant comfort, not confusion. Only now, the meaning had changed. He shifted just slightly, his breath catching. "It feels really good," he whispered, eyes still closed. "I know," I said softly. His lips parted as if to say something else, but he didn't. He just leaned into my hand. I took my time, massaging gently, circling the sensitive ridge of his ear with my thumb. I felt the tension melt again, deeper than before. He was opening in ways he hadn't dared to, even with himself. And I was too. Not a word more was spoken, but everything was understood. When my hand stilled and I finally whispered, "Sleep, baby," he exhaled with a soft surrender I hadn't heard from him in years. He didn't resist. He just nodded, eyes fluttering closed again, and let the darkness hold him. And me? I sat there, unmoving, stroking his hair in the silence, wondering if we had just stepped into something far more complex than either of us were ready for. Because now Touch had memory, and tomorrow would remember.